I was 17 when my parents left me home alone during the biggest snowstorm our town had seen in years. It wasn't supposed to happen. The original plan was simple. My dad had driven my mom 2 hours south for a specialist appointment. They were supposed to leave early Saturday morning and be back before dinner. I stayed home because I had finals the following week and wanted the quiet to study. The weather forecast only called for light snow, nothing serious. By noon, that forecast was completely wrong. The snow came down so hard I could barely see the mailbox from the living room window. By 3 in the afternoon, the state police had started closing highways. Around 4, my dad called. "We're not making it back tonight." Every hotel near them was filling up because the interstate had shut down. "I'll be home tomorrow if they reopen the roads." I told him I'd be fine. Honestly, I was looking forward to having the house to myself. We lived in northern Michigan, about 15 minutes outside a small town. Our house sat at the end of a long gravel driveway, almost 200 yards from the road. The nearest neighbor lived across a frozen field nearly half a mile away. In the summer, it felt peaceful. During a blizzard, it felt isolated. By sunset, the wind had become loud enough to shake the windows. Snow drifted against the garage door. The porch light reflected off millions of tiny snowflakes. Everything beyond 30 feet disappeared into white. I made frozen pizza, watched a movie, texted my parents around 8. My dad replied with a picture of the hotel parking lot buried under snow. "Don't stay up too late." Simple enough. Around 10, I locked every door, checked every window. Our Labrador, Moose, followed me room to room like always. He was 9 years old, big, friendly, the kind of dog who greeted delivery drivers with a wagging tail. Around 11:20, the power blinked. Once, twice, then held. The internet disappeared. Cell service dropped to 1 bar. I figured the storm was damaging lines somewhere. By midnight, I decided to head upstairs. Halfway through brushing my teeth, Moose started barking. Not downstairs, outside my bedroom window. That made no sense. The backyard sat directly beneath that window. There was nothing back there except woods. I pulled the curtain aside. Snow, trees, darkness, nothing else. Moose kept barking anyway. Eventually he stopped. I climbed into bed. At exactly 12:47 a.m., I woke to a dull thump. Not loud, more like something soft hitting the outside wall. A few seconds later, another one. Thump, then another. Thump. They came every 15 or 20 seconds, always near my bedroom. I looked outside again, still nothing. The wind blew snow sideways across the yard. Branches swayed, no movement. I convinced myself snow was sliding off the roof. Eventually the sound stopped. Sunday morning I noticed something odd. The snow beneath my bedroom window had been disturbed. Not footprints, just large patches where fresh snow looked compressed, like something had rested there overnight. The wind could have done that. Maybe. I shrugged it off. The roads were still closed. Dad texted again. "Probably another night." No problem. I had food, heat, books. The storm actually looked beautiful during the day. Around 4 that afternoon, I shoveled the front porch. Snow reached almost to my knees. The driveway had completely disappeared. Everything beyond the mailbox looked white. As I walked back toward the house, Moose stopped beside the garage. He stared toward the woods, completely silent. I followed his gaze. Nothing. Just pine trees covered in snow. Sunday night came early. Heavy clouds blocked what little moonlight there would have been. By 8 o'clock, it felt like midnight. I left the porch light on, mostly because it made the darkness feel farther away. Around 9:15, I heard something scrape across the back deck. A slow scree, then silence. I grabbed a flashlight, opened the back curtain. The deck was covered in fresh snow, untouched. No tracks, nothing. The scraping happened again. This time, from the side of the house. I told myself it was a branch, except there weren't any trees close enough. Moose wouldn't leave the hallway. Every time I encouraged him toward the back door, he refused. Around 11:30, my dad called. The connection kept cutting out. "If anything feels wrong," static. "Call the sheriff." More static. Then the call dropped. At 1:08 a.m., the electricity went out. Everything, instantly. The furnace stopped. The refrigerator went quiet. The house became completely silent, except for the wind. I found flashlights, lit 2 candles. The emergency generator should have started automatically. It didn't. That worried me more than the power outage itself. Dad maintained that generator obsessively. It never failed. I looked through the kitchen window toward the detached garage where it sat. Dark. No indicator lights, no engine noise, nothing. About 10 minutes later, Moose started growling. Low, constant. He stood facing the staircase. Not the front door, not the back door. The stairs. I listened. At first, nothing. Then, a faint creak upstairs. I felt my stomach drop. I was already downstairs. Nobody else should have been in the house. Another creak, then another. Slow, measured. Like someone walking carefully across old floorboards. Moose wouldn't move. Neither would I. I called 911. No signal. I tried again. Nothing. The storm had finally knocked out the cell tower. The footsteps stopped. For almost 5 minutes, nothing happened. Then I heard 3 soft taps. Not on the front door, not downstairs, on my bedroom window. Upstairs, 3 taps. Tap, tap, tap. Every hair on my arm stood up. There was no porch roof beneath that window. No ladder outside. Nothing someone could stand on. Moose barked once, then ran into the laundry room and hid. I'd never seen him do that before. I grabbed my dad's old baseball bat from the closet. Every instinct told me not to go upstairs, but I couldn't stay frozen forever. I climbed slowly. The hallway was dark except for my flashlight. Every bedroom door remained exactly where I'd left it. Closed. I pushed mine open. Nothing. The room was empty. The window was unlocked. I was certain I'd locked it the night before. Snow had blown onto the carpet beneath it, just a thin layer. The window itself sat open less than an inch. Cold air whistled through the gap. I slammed it shut, locked it, pulled the curtains closed. Then I noticed something that made my chest tighten. On the outside of the glass, where frost covered almost everything, there were 3 clean streaks, parallel, as though something had brushed away the frost from outside. Not fingerprints, just 3 narrow lines. I spent the rest of the night sitting in the living room with every light I could power from a camping lantern. Morning finally came around 7. The storm had ended. Sunlight reflected so brightly off the snow it hurt my eyes. Dad arrived just after 9 once the roads reopened. The first thing he did was check the generator. Someone had turned the fuel shutoff valve by hand. Not broken, not frozen. Turned. He assumed he'd forgotten. I knew he hadn't. Then we walked around the house. The snow had preserved almost everything. Our footprints, the mail carrier's tire tracks from Friday, animal prints near the woods. But beneath my bedroom window, there was nothing. No footprints, no ladder marks, no disturbed snow. Nothing that explained how the window had been unlocked from the outside. Dad replaced every lock that afternoon anyway. I never slept in that bedroom again. A year later, we sold the house after he accepted a job in another state. Last winter, I was scrolling through old family photos when I found one my mom had taken from the backyard years before. She'd been trying to photograph the first snowfall of the season. In the background, you could clearly see my bedroom window. I zoomed in. The curtains were open. The room looked empty, except against the glass. There were 3 long, perfectly clear streaks running straight down the outside of the window. The photo had been taken almost 2 years before the storm. No one in my family remembers noticing them. I still don't know what made those marks or what was outside my bedroom that weekend. But every winter when snow starts falling against my windows late at night, I catch myself listening. Not for footsteps, not for voices, just 3 slow taps on the glass. Because once you've heard them when you know you're completely alone, you never really stop expecting them to come back. The first weekend after my divorce was the quietest my house had ever been. Not peaceful, just empty. For 12 years, there had always been noise. Cartoons in the living room, my daughter's music playing upstairs, my son's shoes left in the hallway no matter how many times I told him to put them away. Then one Friday afternoon, I watched my ex-wife drive away with both kids for her weekend. The house felt twice as big the second their SUV disappeared around the corner. I lived outside Springfield, Missouri, on a gravel county road about 7 miles from town. The nearest neighbor was a retired couple almost 300 yards away. Past them, nothing but open fields and patches of woods. During the day, it was beautiful. At night, it was just dark. The kind of dark where you couldn't see your own mailbox without a flashlight. The house itself wasn't old. It had been built around 2005. Single story, attached garage, covered back porch, a privacy fence around the backyard. I'd never felt uncomfortable living there. Not once, even after the divorce. That Friday evening, I ordered pizza, watched a baseball game, and tried not to think too much. Around 9:30, I walked outside to take the trash to the bin near the road. The air smelled like fresh-cut hay. Crickets were loud enough to drown out everything else. As I rolled the trash can back toward the garage, I noticed something. My side gate was open, only a few inches. It led into the fenced backyard. I was almost certain I'd closed it after mowing 2 days earlier. Still, gates drift open, wood shifts, nothing unusual. I latched it shut and went inside. Before bed, I did something I hadn't done in years. I checked every lock, front door, back door, garage entry, windows. Everything was secure. I even set the alarm, mostly because the house felt unfamiliar without the kids. Around 2:10 a.m., the alarm chirped softly. Not the full siren, just a single notification. Garage side door opened. I sat straight up. Then, nothing. No siren. The system reset itself immediately. I grabbed my phone, opened the security app. It showed the alert had lasted less than 1 second. Probably a sensor glitch. They happened occasionally. I still walked downstairs. The garage was empty. Door locked. Nothing missing. I went back to bed. Saturday morning started normally. Coffee, laundry, yard work. Around noon, I decided to organize the garage. While moving boxes near the workbench, I noticed the small magnetic key holder I kept hidden behind an old metal shelf. It was empty. That stopped me. Years ago, I'd hidden a spare house key there. Hardly anyone knew about it. My ex-wife, the kids, and one neighbor who had watched the house during a vacation. I searched everywhere. Nothing. Maybe I'd moved it. Maybe I'd already taken it inside. I couldn't remember. That bothered me more than I'd admit. I replaced the empty holder anyway. Saturday evening, heavy thunderstorms rolled in. By 9 o'clock, rain hammered the roof. The power flickered twice before settling. I made dinner and watched the weather radar on TV. The local station warned about 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts. Perfect night to stay inside. Around 11:45, I heard something metallic outside. A sharp clink, like someone tapping a chain-link fence. Then again, clink. The sound came from the backyard. I turned off the television, listened. Nothing. The rain covered everything else. I grabbed a flashlight and checked through the kitchen window. Fence, patio, grill. Nothing moved. I convinced myself it had been the wind. At exactly 1:07 a.m., my dog started barking. I should probably mention him. Ranger, German Shepherd, almost 90 pounds. He wasn't aggressive, but he'd bark if someone even slowed down in front of the house. That night, he wasn't barking at the front. He stood in the hallway staring toward the garage door. Low growl, hackles raised. I called him. He didn't move. Then, he backed away, still staring at the garage. That wasn't like him. I opened the garage entry door. Dark, silent. The motion light hadn't turned on. Nothing. Ranger refused to step inside. Sunday morning, I noticed muddy footprints on the garage floor. One set, large work boots. They began near the side door, walked halfway toward my tool cabinet, then stopped. No prints leading back. The concrete beyond them was clean. I actually got on my hands and knees trying to figure it out. It made no sense. I checked the security camera over the driveway. The timestamp between 12:58 a.m. and 1:14 a.m. was corrupted. Just gray static. Every recording before and after worked perfectly. I called the camera company. They blamed the storm. Fair enough. Sunday afternoon, I decided to change every lock in the house. Not because I was convinced someone had a key, because it helped me feel like I was doing something. The hardware store was 15 minutes away. I left at 3:20, returned around 5. As I pulled into my driveway, the garage door was open, halfway. I knew I'd closed it. The opener light was still on, glowing yellow inside. I parked, walked slowly toward it. Nothing looked disturbed. The lawnmower sat where it always did, toolboxes untouched, bikes hanging from hooks. Then I noticed the workbench. Someone had placed my spare garage remote neatly in the center. I never kept it there. It normally stayed inside the kitchen junk drawer. I searched the house. Nothing missing, nothing broken, no signs anyone had been inside. I called the sheriff's office. A deputy arrived about 30 minutes later. He checked every room, every window, every door. He found no evidence of forced entry. When I mentioned the missing spare key, he asked a question I hadn't considered. "Have you checked with your ex-wife?" I called her immediately. She still had her copy. She even sent me a picture holding it. So that wasn't it. Sunday night became the longest night I've ever spent alone. I kept every outside light on, television running. Ranger slept beside the couch instead of upstairs. Around 2:40 a.m., I heard footsteps on the back porch. Not loud, just enough to hear a weight shift across the wooden boards. 1, 2, 3, then silence. Ranger lifted his head but didn't bark. He just stared at the back door. I looked through the peephole. Nothing. Then, 3 slow knocks, not on the front door, the back door. Knock. Knock. There's some. Knock. Exactly 3. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it. I called 911 without opening the door. Deputies arrived in less than 10 minutes. Again, nobody. One deputy walked around the backyard with a flashlight. He stopped near the gate. The latch is open. I hadn't opened it. The deputy searched the woods behind my property. Nothing. Monday morning, my kids came home. Life felt normal again. The house sounded alive. I almost convinced myself the entire weekend had been stress getting to me, until Tuesday evening. I was replacing batteries in one of the smoke detectors when my son asked, "Dad, why'd you move the spare key?" I froze. What spare key? The one behind the shelf in the garage. I looked for it Saturday. I thought maybe you moved it. I hadn't told him it was missing. Not a word. I asked how he knew. He shrugged. Because somebody put another one there. I walked straight into the garage, pulled the magnetic box off the metal shelf. Inside, it was a house key. Brand new, still shiny, not mine. It didn't fit any lock in the house. I handed it to the deputy later that afternoon. No fingerprints, no identifiable marks, nothing. They never figured out where it came from. I agreed to house sit because it sounded like the easiest money I'd make all semester. I was 21, studying mechanical engineering at a university just outside Raleigh, North Carolina. Thanksgiving break was coming up, and almost everyone on my floor had already made plans to go home. My parents were visiting family overseas that year, and flying out for only a week didn't make financial sense. So when my professor asked if anyone wanted to watch his house while he and his wife visited their daughter in Colorado, I volunteered before he finished explaining the details. All I had to do was feed their golden retriever twice a day, water a few plants, bring in the mail, and make sure the pipes didn't freeze if the temperature dropped overnight. He paid me $400. For a college student living off instant noodles and cafeteria food, that sounded incredible. Their neighborhood sat about 25 minutes from campus. It was one of those quiet subdivisions built in the early 2000s. Wide sidewalks, nearly identical brick houses, maple trees lining both sides of every street. Most driveways held SUVs with school stickers on the back windows. During the day, people walked dogs or pushed strollers. At night, it emptied out completely. The professor handed me a small ring with 3 keys: front door, garage, back patio. He also wrote the Wi-Fi password on a sticky note and pointed toward the thermostat. "If anything feels wrong," he said, "call me." I laughed. What could go wrong? He smiled. You'd be surprised how many people forget to lock sliding doors. That stayed in my head longer than it should have. I moved in that Friday afternoon. The dog, Murphy, was friendly immediately. Big golden retriever, about 7 years old, lazy. He spent most of the day sleeping near the front window. The house itself was comfortable. 2 stories, wood floors downstairs, carpet upstairs, a small office beside the front entrance, master bedroom overlooking the backyard. The guest room became mine for the week. Across the street sat another 2-story house, gray siding, white shutters, a basketball hoop over the garage. Nothing unusual, except no one seemed to live there. The driveway stayed empty. No lights came on at night. The mailbox overflowed with flyers. I assumed the owners were traveling too. Friday passed quietly, Saturday too. Murphy followed me everywhere. Whenever I made coffee, he sat beside me. When I watched TV, he stretched across the living room rug. Around 11 every night, I'd let him into the backyard one last time before locking everything up. Simple routine. Sunday night was colder. The weather forecast predicted temperatures just below freezing. Around 10:45 p.m., I walked Murphy outside. The neighborhood was silent. No cars, no people. Just the distant hum of traffic from the highway about a mile away. Murphy wandered toward the fence, then stopped. His ears stood straight up. He stared through the wooden slats toward the front of the property, completely still. I called his name. Nothing. He didn't bark, didn't growl, just watched. Finally, he turned around and hurried back inside. I figured he'd seen a raccoon, or maybe another dog. I locked the back door, checked every window, went upstairs. Around 1:18 a.m., I woke to Murphy barking downstairs. Not playful barking, short, sharp. The kind dogs use when someone approaches the house. I grabbed my phone, looked outside the bedroom window. Nothing. The streetlights cast long yellow pools across the pavement. Everything looked normal. Murphy kept barking, then suddenly stopped. Silence. I waited another minute before going downstairs. The dog stood near the front door, tail low, looking through the narrow glass panel beside it. I looked too. Nobody. I turned on the porch light. Empty driveway, empty street. I opened the door. Cold air rushed inside. No footsteps, no vehicles, nothing. I convinced myself someone had walked by. Maybe a jogger, maybe a neighbor. The next morning, I found muddy footprints leading halfway across the front porch. Only halfway. They stopped directly in front of the welcome mat. No prints leading away. The concrete beyond the porch remained clean. I stared at them for a long time. Maybe the sun had dried the rest. Maybe I'd overlooked something. I didn't mention it. Monday afternoon, I noticed something else. The gray house across the street. One upstairs curtain had moved. Not much, just enough that it looked slightly open now. I couldn't remember if it had always been like that. That evening, while bringing in the mail, I looked over again. The curtain was closed. I shrugged it off. Around dinner time, Murphy refused to eat. That surprised me more than anything. The professor had warned me the dog inhaled food. Now he sniffed the bowl, walked away. Instead, he sat beside the front window, watching, always watching. Tuesday night it rained, a steady drizzle that lasted for hours. Perfect weather for staying inside. I watched a basketball game until around midnight. Before heading upstairs, I glanced through the living room window. The gray house had one light on. Upstairs, the first light I'd seen all week. It disappeared the moment I looked at it, almost like someone had switched it off. I stood there another minute, nothing. Murphy wouldn't come near the front of the house anymore. He stayed in the kitchen. Around 2:30 a.m., I woke again. This time because my phone buzzed. A weather alert, heavy winds, nothing serious. As I set the phone back down, I heard 3 soft knocks. Not on my bedroom door, downstairs, front door. 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Murphy started whining, not barking, whining. I checked the time. 2:34? Who knocks on someone's door at that hour in the rain? I stayed where I was. 5 minutes passed. No more knocking. Eventually, curiosity won. I crept downstairs. Every light remained off. The front porch stood empty. Rain fell steadily. No cars, no people. I locked the deadbolt again anyway. The next morning, a cardboard package sat on the porch. No shipping label, no address. Just an empty box, completely soaked from the rain. Inside, nothing. I threw it away. Wednesday afternoon, I decided to walk Murphy around the neighborhood. As we passed the gray house, I noticed something strange. The mailbox was empty now. Every flyer, every advertisement, gone. Yet the driveway remained vacant. No tire tracks, no deliveries, nothing. A retired neighbor watering flowers across the street smiled at me. "You watching the Harris place?" "Yeah." He nodded toward the professor's house. "Nice folks." Then he casually asked, "You know the people across from you?" "I thought nobody lived there." He frowned. "They don't. They moved in September. House hasn't sold yet." I looked back. "What about lights?" "What lights?" I didn't answer. That night I kept every downstairs light on. It made me feel ridiculous, but better. Around 11 p.m., Murphy walked to the front window again. Only this time, he backed away almost immediately, tail tucked. Then he disappeared upstairs. I looked outside. Nothing. Until I noticed the basketball hoop. Someone had placed a black trash bag over the rim. I was almost certain it hadn't been there earlier. Thursday, Thanksgiving, was the worst night. Most families were still away. The neighborhood felt abandoned. Even the highway sounded quieter. Around 9 p.m., I made leftovers and watched a movie. Halfway through, the power flickered. Once, twice, then stabilized. The Wi-Fi went out. My phone switched to cellular. Murphy began pacing, back and forth between the kitchen and front hallway, over and over. Then he stopped, facing the staircase, listening. So was I. At first, nothing. Then, a single creak. Upstairs, slow, measured, like someone shifting their weight on old wood. I froze. There shouldn't have been anyone upstairs. I had checked every room before dinner. I grabbed the fireplace poker. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. Another creak, then silence. I climbed the stairs one at a time. Every bedroom was empty. Closets, bathrooms, nothing. When I came back down, the front door was standing slightly open, just a few inches. I knew I had locked it. I was absolutely sure. Murphy was nowhere to be seen. I found him hiding inside the downstairs laundry room. Shaking, I shut and locked the door again. Then called the professor, straight to voicemail. I called the police next. 2 officers arrived within 10 minutes. They searched the property. Backyard, garage, attic, nothing. One officer asked if anything had been stolen. I couldn't think of anything. Before leaving, he walked across the street to check the empty house. He came back a few minutes later. Looked secure. I asked if anyone had been inside. He shrugged. Doesn't look like it. Friday morning, I packed my things. The professor was returning that afternoon. As I loaded my backpack into my car, I glanced toward the gray house one last time. The upstairs curtain was open, just a little, enough to see inside. The room was completely empty, except for one wooden chair, facing directly toward the professor's front door. Nothing else. No furniture, no boxes, just one chair. I almost walked over. Instead, I got in my car and left. A few weeks later, I met my professor after class to return the spare keys. I casually mentioned the police visit. He looked surprised. Then he said something that has stayed with me ever since. "Oh, I forgot to tell you. The family across the street used to complain about someone knocking on their door late at night." I laughed nervously. "What happened?" "They eventually moved." He smiled like it wasn't important. "They never figured out who it was." I didn't tell him about the chair, or the muddy footprints, or Murphy refusing to go near the front window, because I wasn't sure which part bothered me the most. The knocking, the empty house, Or the fact that whenever I think back to that week, I can't remember ever seeing the front door of the gray house open. Not once. Even though, somehow, the mailbox kept emptying itself.